Well, we're in Frankfurt. We're on another Cosmos tour of Germany, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary and Austria. We're starting in Frankfurt and it should be good. Lots of people are out enjoying the autumn sunshine. And there's a very German look. The long skinny ship on the river. Here's an interesting feature of Frankfurt. On the bridge, everybody padlocks it.
Yeah, put a padlock on, and on this one, Monica and Nina and Marcus and Melanie and Rebecca, they all put their name on here.
We're heading north from Frankfurt, which was in West Germany, and this is Eisenach, which was a border between the west and the east that got taken down when Germany was reunited in 1989, and we're heading for Berlin. And on the way is Weimar, which was the intellectual capital of East Germany. And up here we have Goethe and Schiller, who wrote William Tell, and people like Bach and Luther and Liszt. They all studied here and taught here, so it's very much an intellectual capital.
And these lovely little European towns, there's nothing to compare with them. They're beautiful. It's beautifully kept, especially here in Germany. Lots of flowers and old buildings.
And even today there are art schools and music schools here. Lovely place. And here's one of the hangovers from Eastern Europe. The traffic lights are different, so you get nice little men. Weimar wasn't bombed during the war, so the buildings are still pretty much in the same condition as they have been for a long, long time. And here we have the infamous Berlin Wall. It was created almost overnight by the GDR, German Democratic Republic, in 1961. And it was demolished in 1989. And right next door to this part of the wall was where Hitler had his SS headquarters, and this was where interrogation and all manner of terrors took place. The wall was about 155 kilometers. It was erected almost overnight, sealing off the western part of Berlin. And then in 1989, when finally they convinced, if you like, the communists to pull it down or to allow people through, it was gradually being pulled down, and today there are enough bits of the German wall, of the Berlin Wall, that you can buy to make lots and lots and lots of them. They're great souvenirs, but it's a testimony of a very terrible part of history. So many people died trying to climb across this wall, over 5,000 people, and it was very, very hard to do so. So, very sad really. Rather ironic that on it here the graffiti says "Save our planet." And these days there's just a line in the road to show what was the Berlin Wall. And right here is Checkpoint Charlie, which became the focus of the Cold War between the East and the West. Checkpoint Charlie was at the junction between the American and the Russian parts of West Berlin. And now there's McDonald's.
One of the symbols of Berlin is a teddy bear, and all around the place you'll find teddy bears in all sorts of different positions and attire.
This one's Marlene Dietrich.
Yeah.
And this is 17th of June Street. named because some East Germans wanted to protest against the regime, and right here in this street they just got simply gunned down right in the middle of the road. And here we have the main symbol of Berlin, the Brandenburg Gate. It was built in 1791 and was one of the original gates to the city. And when the wall was up, the East Germans could look through the Brandenburg Gate towards the west and dream of freedom. So this became a symbol for hope for the future. But these days, East and West Berlin are united into one city, and today the East is a bit drab and the West is very, very modern, but the two cultures are gradually coming together in one. So today Berlin is the capital of Germany, a bustling city with 3.5 million people. And it's been good for us to come here because it's such a historical place. And now we're in Poland. And the first place we visit is Poznan, which is an old medieval market town, and this was very briefly capital of Poland. This whole town was flattened in Second World War, and it's been reconstructed in the same style as it used to. And an interesting feature here is that the houses, the number of windows you have indicates how rich you are. So there's 2 windows, poor, 3 windows, richer, 4 windows, very rich, 5 windows, even more rich. And here we have Potsdam's town hall, and the legend is that in the 15th century 2 billy goats were having a fight here, and that alerted the people to a fire that was in the town. So every day the billy goats come out and everybody sees them fighting. There they go. So that's how the billy goats saved the town of Poznan. So now all the townspeople are safe. Different nations responded quite differently under communism. In Poland, their way was to turn to the Lord, turn to the church. And so Christianity is very important in Poland, and 95% of the people are Catholics and practicing Christians. So that's the way they coped under the terrible oppression of communism. And they're very proud that Pope John Paul II, that he came from Poland too. And now welcome to Warsaw, the capital of Poland and a city of 1.8 million people. And there are few cities in the world that have had as much trial and tribulation as this city has. This is the site of the Jewish ghetto in Warsaw, where 300,000 Jews were effectively imprisoned in a small community. And another 100,000 were brought in here. Very somber spot. This side of the monument recognises the victims who were sent to the Treblinka, the nearest concentration camp. And this side recognises the uprising that took place in 1943, when some of the young people from the ghetto tried to withstand the Germans unsuccessfully.
The Polish Jews, of course, were not the only Jewish people that were targeted in this way, but it is a very moving place to come to hear. It happened all over Europe.
We're now in Warsaw's old town, and this place was completely destroyed during the Second World War by the Germans, but has been rebuilt faithfully so that it now looks like what it used to look like back then. This is the Royal Palace, and this column is of King Iggy, who moved the capital of Poland from Krakow here to Warsaw 400 odd years ago. And this is the only bit of the original Warsaw wall that is left, and it's dated back 600 years. So it's pretty remarkable what they have done to recreate this place over the last 50 years. And this is what the market square of the old town looked like at the end of the Second World War. And here's what it looks like today. It took about 11 years to reconstruct it, mainly using the rubble that was here. And it all was done with Polish money too. The Poles came straight back to Poland after the war to begin this reconstruction.
After a desperate struggle, the extermination of hundreds of thousands of human beings, only a handful was saved, the total annihilation of part of the city. General of the SS, Jürgenstrup, liquidator of the ghetto, he reports to his Führer, the Jewish district of Warsaw has ceased to exist. "63 days of battle, 16,000 soldiers killed, 150,000 civilian residents killed. The evacuation of the city, 1 million people." On Hitler's orders, the burning and dynamiting of whatever was still left standing. For almost 3 months, swirling flames and explosives transformed the city into a desert. Requiem for Warsaw.
So when they started to rebuild, they had to do what they could with what they had, and so they got all the bricks together and rebuilt houses. Sometimes they could only find little bits like these pieces up here, and you can see the bullet holes in them, and they just incorporated them into the new building.
And sometimes they just built the new on top of the old, and that's what's happened here. Commemorating Polish freedom.
If there's one thing about Poland that really hits you when you come here, that is the tenacity of the people and their willingness to fight, and they've had to do it for many, many, many generations, and to actually get all this rebuilt, and when there was only old people left to do it, is quite something. So good on you, Poland. The Polish are very proud of the fact that Chopin was actually born in Poland, and his music is revered here. And in fact, this seat here, you can come and sit on it and push the button and play some Chopin for about 40 seconds or so. And during World War II, the Germans were so threatened by the power of Chopin's music that they banned anybody from playing or owning any music that was by Chopin, because the Poles had related so deeply to it.
And if you did play some, you went off to the concentration
camp.
camps.
The concentration camp. They really took it very seriously.
And here's the great man himself, Frédéric Chopin. There are monuments to Chopin everywhere. His heart's buried in here, but his body is in France. This is the President's Palace, and this is the Royal Way, which is the upper class part of Warsaw. Very posh. Another one of Poland's famous sons is Copernicus, who worked out that the planets go around the Earth. Of all the countries in the world, Poland really has had probably one of the worst possible histories. They had, between the First and Second World Wars, they had a time of relative prosperity and growth, and then Hitler came in here and just crushed the country. At the end of the Second World War, Stalin brought in his troops and so-called freed the place, but that led to communist oppression here. And they set up to rebuild the place using social realism. And look at the building behind us here. That's the Communist Party headquarters, and look at the style. Very much social realism. Cold, grey, concrete, boring. And now it's the headquarters for Ferrari. And this is Constitution Square, named after Stalin's Constitution for the Communist Party, which was set up in 1952. Its lights are about its only adornment to make it pretty. Not very inspiring, is it? The square is the world's largest example of social realism. It was a way by which the Communist Party tried to influence people so that they all thought the same and felt the same, and to try and control society by the drabness of the buildings so that everybody, if you like, was equal and the same. The only decoration on the buildings was things like this, celebrating the workers. And just to show that not everything in Warsaw is drab and grey, we're at the Wieliczka Gardens, and this is the summer palace of the last king of Poland, the so-called Palace on the Water. And isn't that beautiful?
Coming to Warsaw has been a mixed blessing, really. It's a place of real beauty, but of tragedy as well, and perhaps that's what makes Warsaw so special, and how it affects you, because it certainly affects you. There's something about the place that gets right in there, and you realise that there's been a lot of struggle going on in spite of all the beauty around here. So it's a good place to visit.
And a testimony to human courage.
Absolutely.
And it looks all very pretty in autumn. We've now left Warsaw and we're in Jasna Gora Monastery. And this is one of the top 5 sites in the whole wide world where pilgrims can come seeking miracles. And the reason is because of the Black Madonna. And the legend is that St. Luke actually painted the Madonna and Child in a little painting. And it travelled from Jerusalem to Constantinople and then finally here to Poland. And the legend is that in the 14th century some robbers came to the monastery and they tried to slash the face of the Black Madonna. And when the monks painted it over the next day, it started to bleed. And this apparently showed that this was a holy icon that could do miracles. And so now people come from all over the world to Jasna Gora here, seeking miracles through the Black Madonna.
To przyjdźcie na moją pamiątkę.
So Jasna Gora is the most holy spiritual site in the whole of Poland.
We're now at Birkenau. Birkenau is a death camp which was used in the 1940s, in the Second World War. It's next to Auschwitz, and I think it's going to be pretty harrowing what we're going to hear now and see, but it's important to come.
This camp is enormous. It stretches as far as the eye can see, and there are barracks everywhere just to house mainly Jews so that they could be exterminated. They came in here by train, not really knowing what was going to happen to them. Birkenau has been kept in exactly the same condition as it was at the end of the war, so that the atrocities that took place here will not be forgotten. Jews were housed in here in these barracks very briefly before being sent to the gas chamber. It's hard to describe the size of this facility. It's monstrous. And apparently 64,000 people a day were exterminated here. This is where the trains came in. It's almost impossible to imagine how people must have felt as their train went along these tracks. The first people to be exterminated here were Poles, then Gypsies, and then Hitler started his plan of exterminating the whole Jewish population of Europe. And here we have the main entrance of Auschwitz, and the sign up above says, "Work sets you free." They were told a lie that they were coming here to a work camp. But the only way out was through there. Some did get to work, but only as it suited the Germans. They weren't considered people, they were just numbers. 1,250 people were housed in each of these blocks. But even if they did get to do some work, they were ultimately here for one purpose only: extermination. And this is where they came from, all over. They came by train, then they were sorted, men and the women, children. Anyone who couldn't work was immediately selected out and sent to the gas chambers. The old, women, children. They were stripped and told that they were going to have a shower. Then they were sent to the gas chambers. And then afterwards the bodies were exploited. Hair was removed and gold and anything of value. And nothing was wasted, not even their belongings, anything. Block 10 is where they carried out medical experiments, Joseph Mengele, and then the dreaded Block 11 is where people were tortured. And this is the Wall of Death where people were summarily shot. And this is where people were mustered before they went there into the gas chambers. Once you were in here, there was no way out.
After a while it all gets too much for you and you just have to stop filming and stop taking photos because it's so overwhelming. Yeah, you can feel the spirit and the heart of the place.
And that's the gas chamber. And then here's the crematorium. And what has struck me is how organised and methodical the Germans were in doing this. They killed so many millions, but they did it in such an efficient and atrocious way, really. It was just horrible. Beyond anything that almost somebody could imagine, and yet we know it happened. So countless millions of Jews and Poles and all other kind of people who were enemies of the Nazis were exterminated here. It's a terrible, terrible chapter in human history, and we just hope it doesn't ever happen again. Auschwitz was liberated at the end of the war in 1945, and they've kept it pretty much as it was on that day. I suppose that's a good thing, because it means we'll never forget the atrocities that took place here. This place stands as a memorial of how awful, how terrible, how horrible human beings can be. Hopefully it's a warning for future generations, so that this kind of thing never happens again.
My grandfather was a highly decorated German soldier from the First World War, but it didn't stop the Nazis from taking him away and putting him into Dachau concentration camp. He was in there for some months when my grandmother wrote to the German SS and said, "What on earth are you doing? He's a highly decorated German soldier." So with that response, they let him go, and he came back home for 3 months. And during that time, he tried every agency to get out of Germany without success, including the British, the Jewish, everything, but without avail. And 3 months later, they took him to Auschwitz. And once he arrived there, he wrote to us to say, "I'm doing fine, great place, don't worry about me, don't send anything because there's so many people here, I'm not sure if I'd ever receive it." And then a few weeks later we got his death certificate, which I took a photocopy of with his photograph and my condolences, which I planted in Auschwitz. And I can remember that. But during the time that he was out of Dachau, he told my father that he should try and save us as children. And we went into the Harz Mountains and we hid into a little town called Altona. So I'm very grateful I'm still alive.
Wow. We're now in Krakow, Poland, and between about the year 1000 through to the 1600s, this was the capital of Poland. And right here we're in the Jewish quarter. And in the Second World War, there was a ghetto of about 70,000 Jews who lived here. And this is where the story of Schindler's List was filmed, because this is where it took place. And that 70,000 went off into the concentration camps nearby. A pretty sad place.
This is that ghetto memorial, very symbolic in its form and its shape, because it was right here on that square where those who survived the ghetto were gathered the 13th of March of 1943, which was Saturday, and they were told it was to go to labor camps. So people brought suitcases full of things, chairs, small pieces of furniture, anything they could carry.
And here's the main Jewish synagogue. And none of this area, or indeed any of Krakow, was destroyed in the war because the Germans had their headquarters here. They took over all the Polish and Jewish businesses so that they could have this as their central headquarters for Poland. This is a very important site for Jews because it's the tomb of Moses Remu, who wrote commentaries on the Torah. Now we're on Wawel Hill in Krakow, and here is its magnificent cathedral. This is where John Paul II came from before he became the Pope. Wouldn't it have been a tragedy if all this magnificent building had been destroyed in the war? And here in the castle on the top of the hill is where the Nazis had their headquarters. And that, of course, is why Krakow exists today. It wasn't destroyed. Wawel is surrounded by the Wieliczka River, which goes through Krakow. And it goes right up to Warsaw. It's the longest river in Poland. Now we're going to go along the Royal Way so that we can go to Market Square. This road is thought to be the oldest road in Krakow. And over here is where John Paul used to live. And this is the Church of St. Mary Magdalene, dating back about 800 years. Krakow is very much a city of churches. There are lots of them, but quite a few were destroyed by fire over the years. And this is St. Mary's Church, and every day here buglers play. The market square here in Krakow is the biggest market square in the whole of Europe. It goes back to medieval times.
And I hear there's a whole floor of shopping bargains to be had down in there. So We're going to go and check it out.
They're not medieval shopping though. Just look at this. But even though these old buildings still stand, doesn't mean to say they haven't had a tough history. This place was used as a torture chamber. But nowadays, Krakow is a modern, young and vibrant city. And it's a student city with 200,000 students here. Quite different to Warsaw. Now we're going to the Wieliczka salt mines. This is a World Heritage Site, something pretty special.
Hopefully it'll be better than going to the salt mines in Siberia. At least we'll come back from this one.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we're going down the salt mine, so let's do it.
The mine was first opened in the 1250s, so it's very old, and all the way there are these statues of famous people, and here we have Copernicus. This one was created by the miners, and it shows the first bit of salt that was mined here being given to the princess. All the walls are shored up with timber, and over time they get covered in salt. Iron would be no good because it would just rust. Most of the time they used horses to cart the salt out. These horses stayed underground 24 hours a day for up to 18 years. This mine goes a long way down. It's in all different levels. You can move down from one level to the other. Overall, there are 200 kilometres of tunnels under the ground here. And here we have the biggest underground chapel in Europe. And everything in here is made of salt, including the chandeliers. And this is a working church. They still hold services here today.
So this is quite spectacular. I've never been in a salt mine like this before, and to think that this is a working church and it was made so long ago, and every little detail is thought of for the Catholic faith and the way of worshipping.
For example, here's Da Vinci's Last Supper, but made in salt. We've seen some pretty magnificent churches on this tour. This one is pretty magnificent in its own way too. All made of salt. And just look at the kind of timber work that's needed to hold a mine like this up. Amazing. We're now 130 metres under the ground, and there's 200 metres more to go. And there are even lakes under here. And they can make all sorts of lovely things out of the salt as well. Well, that was really good. We were able to see a salt mine that goes back to the 1200s, still working today, and incredible what people have created over the years. It's almost like a city. Now we're going on a tour of the Danube at night. And we're in Budapest, and this is quite outstanding. And now, welcome to Hungary. We're in Budapest, and this is a big city, a city of 2 million people, and it's really buzzing. Here we are in Heroes Square, and this is where they recognise and remember the heroes of the past in Hungary. These European cities really do things in style. This is quite magnificent. Over there are the various heroes, and the Archangel Gabriel, who watches over the city. And all of these people have been very important over the centuries for this country. And here's another memorial to King Saint Stephen, who was the first Hungarian king. Like other European countries, Hungary has had a very difficult history, and this is called the Holy Trinity Tower, and it was built to remember the terrible times that have taken place in the past. And in the Second World War, 600,000 Jews were deported from here and didn't come back.
So much history has taken place around here, and in fact in one battle 128,000 soldiers from Hungary, from Germany and from Russia were killed in a 3-month period, and they've kept a few remnants to remind people. This is World War II, where there was a battle took place, and they've kept the building with all its bullet marks just as a reminder of what's gone on in the past.
Budapest is separated into two halves by the Danube River down here. At the moment we're on the Buda side, and over there is the Parliament, which of course is on the Pest side. And once again, the scale of this place is just incredible. So lovely, set above the Danube and the big city. And here we have a panorama looking out over the whole city of Budapest. Quite magnificent. And here's the same panorama, but this time from the Pest side. There's the castle, Buda Castle, with Matthias Church. And the palace. And this is the chain bridge that links Buda and Pest across the Danube. And here you can see why it's called a chain bridge. So many lovely sights in Budapest.
And last night, for a bit of fun, Tunda and Giovanni, our driver, went round and round and round and round this roundabout until we could all say that this was the chain bridge and that was the Buda Castle, but we couldn't get it right, so we went round and round and round, I don't know, about 20 times. It was great fun.
It's a real privilege to come here to Budapest in Hungary. I wasn't really expecting such a big place, and a place with so much history and so much recognition of the trials and tribulations of the past. And they've done that really well here. I feel very privileged to have come to this city, and not only just to have seen the sights of the city, but also to have experienced some of the culture of Hungary, and that's pretty special. And now, welcome to Vienna, the capital of Austria and the home of Johann Strauss.
And one of the best things you can do in Vienna is go to the Kutzalon Palace for a concert of Johann Strauss and Mozart.
Vienna is the capital of Austria, a city of 1.6 million, and it's very much a centre of culture. This is the Opera House. So there's always going to be lots of beautiful music taking place here. The buildings here are just amazing. Something like this would be called a palace, not because a king lives here, but just because it's a big building. And this is Kundnerstrasse, the main walking street of Vienna.
And it's where all the, to quote our tour director Tunda, shiki-miki, people come to buy expensive clothes at expensive shops and to be seen. We're a little underdressed for this place, but hey, you can tell a tourist from a local.
The buildings here really are magnificent, but they're very prone to getting dirty. You can see this section has been cleaned, this one is being cleaned, and it only lasts 11 years before it needs to be cleaned again. And now we're in Heroes Square, and this is the Hofburg Palace, holding the National Library. And as I said, the buildings here are simply magnificent. And this is the inner courtyard of the palace. They sure did build things differently in the old days, didn't they? This was the winter residence of the last emperors of Austria. They certainly lived in style. This was their chapel.
And nowadays it's where the Vienna Boys Choir will live while they're in the choir until their voice breaks.
And this is Joseph II. And he had quite a nice palace, didn't he, for his winter palace. And here we have some of the original Roman walls. They had quite different forms of transport in those days. But isn't this magnificent? And I suppose if they wanted to do some shopping, they could just go down the road and it's all there. And it's also the place where you can spot some Cosmos tourists who've come to Vienna from all around the world. This column was to commemorate those who died in the Black Plague that struck here a couple of times. Vienna really is mind-blowing. There's just so many people here, all busy. This place really is buzzing. And here we have the most well-known building in Vienna, St. Stephen's Cathedral. You can see that it's quite dirty, and this section of it has been cleaned. St. Stephen's Cathedral was built in the 12th century, and it stands right in the middle of Vienna. Inside, it's not as ornate as some of the other churches that we've seen, but it's still pretty spectacular. But here's the pulpit, and it's been carved out of one piece of sandstone in the 15th century. How about that? Quite a place to preach from, isn't it? This is a tribute to the Virgin Mary. Unfortunately, this church was bombed in the Second World War. Its roof taken off. There's not much of the original stained glass left. This mural depicts the stoning of St. Stephen, after whom this church was named. On this trip we've seen lots of different Catholic churches, and we've seen how important the Catholic Church has been in European countries. And boy oh boy, they've spent an awful lot on their churches. They are absolutely beautiful, incredible carvings and tapestries and lots of beauty in there. Really is quite spectacular what they've done in their churches.
Vienna is a very good example of how they've done the mix of the old and the new. They've kept things as they are when they could, but when they went modern, they went very modern. And it's an interesting city to explore.
It's a flash dance. And now, welcome to the Czech Republic and the famous city of Prague. Prague is the capital of the Czech Republic, and has a population of about 1.3 million people. And this country has had a very checkered history, if you like. Czechoslovakia started after the First World War and aligned with Germany during the war. Then after the war became communist, and the terror was probably even worse under communism than under the Germans. And then in 1983 it split into the Czech Republic and Slovakia, and then in 1989 communism at last went under. And so today we have a most amazing city, very beautiful, very colourful, and also very historic. And now we're in Prague's Old Town Square, a centre of trade since the 9th century. Over there is St. Nicholas Church, and here is the town hall. And notice how one wall of the town hall is quite different. That's because it got blown off in the war. This is the famous astronomical clock, and I can assure you that it is saying it is 11 o'clock in the morning, and these are the 12 apostles that come out every hour. And dominating everything in the square is the old Toyn Church. Again, very impressive.
And the damage is minimal. There's not much damage here, and that is because Hitler wanted to make Prague a little trophy for himself about the centre of Jewishness, and so he brought all the treasures from all the other countries, the Jewish treasures, and centred them all here. And fortunately for us is that the war finished before he had a chance to destroy everything that was here, which is what he did pretty much in most of the other major towns and cities in Europe.
And this is the Jewish Museum where now all those treasures are held. It's wonderful that they've been preserved. And here's the Hebrew clock, and it all reads backwards because in Hebrew you always read from the back to the front. So it's now 11:45 in Hebrew. And this is the new old synagogue in the Jewish quarter. Nobody really knows why it's called the new old synagogue, but it's the oldest synagogue in Europe.
And sadly it's from this area that about 70,000 Jewish people were rounded up from these houses around here and taken away to concentration camps.
So the Second World War hit Prague badly too, even though they were on the German side.
Yeah.
And this is the Rudolfinum, which is the centre of arts for Prague. Again, magnificent. They really do produce buildings with style. Prague is split into two by the Vltava River, and this is the old town and the famous Charles Bridge. Then on this side is called the Lesser Town. And dominating it all is Prague Castle, the biggest medieval castle in all of Europe. And up here is good King Wenceslas, who last looked out on the feast of Stephen, and he's the patron saint of this whole area.
Good King Wenceslas last looked out on the feast of Stephen. This is good King Wenceslas's vineyard up here, or it's named after him anyway. He was a very good king and he looked after and out for peasants and other people in need, and very much revered here.
So we're crossing the Charles Bridge and heading up to the castle. Here we have the gates of the castle, and this is St. Nicholas Church within the castle. So much effort goes into creating these monuments. Quite incredible. And the palace isn't just beautiful churches and massive buildings, it's also lovely gardens. This is the Garden of Paradise. And dominating it all is St. Vitus Cathedral. How about that? Lots of gold. So impressive. The intricate detail that you see everywhere, it's just incredible. And inside, it's just as beautiful. So you can see within the castle complex there are all sorts of types of buildings. This is St. George's Basilica, and here's a temple for Maria Theresa in Roman style. And here's the view from the castle. Over there's the old town and the lesser town, and the view across Prague city. There's St. Nicholas Church. And the panorama of Prague. The changing of the guard at Prague Castle.
And Prague is as beautiful a city as expected and as you read about. It's a wonderful city, easy to get around. The distances aren't too bad within the middle of the city, and I think it's a must in a tourist destination and a great place to visit and to explore.
After Prague we headed back to Germany, a brief stop in Munich where it rained, and then to this quaint little village of Nördlingen. There are thousands of medieval villages like this in Germany, dominated by a church in the centre, then a square, and then all the quaint buildings. And a feature of this particular place is the pigs, because a pig escaped and came rushing back into town to alert the townspeople that there are enemies outside. Encircling the village is a wall, a gate, all designed to protect the people from enemies outside. So there's a tower and the city walls, the gate, and it overlooks the countryside. Just look at that. Beautiful.
These quaint little villages, which are just so beautiful, what is so amazing about them is that they actually haven't changed a lot over the centuries, other than the shops and commercial part that's been put in there, and people actually live here and they make their home here, and all of this grand history and these beautiful surroundings. It's
been the same since the year 1000.
Yeah.
Amazing. And in the centre is the town hall. This is Rothenburg. The water supply and the market square. And the church. Even in a small town they'll have more than one church, and the size of the church is just immense. In this part of Germany, in the 1600s, every Protestant was made to become Catholic, and that led to the 30 Years' Wars. It's a pretty dark period of history here.
Now this is a local delicacy. It's a Schneeballen or something like that. Snowball, a donut, and I've heard it's really nice, so I'm not sure how you eat it, so let's give it a go. Oh, my. Very sweet. Nice.
There are villages like this right throughout the German countryside. They all go back thousands of years, back to medieval times. And it's sort of like living history. The buildings haven't changed much, and it's lovely to see that today they've preserved them pretty much how they've always been. It's a privilege to come here.
I think we had a beautiful tour together. All the people who was traveling with us, it was great and excellent. Extremely, I enjoyed myself. I had no problem. We didn't go to hospitals. We didn't end up in police stations. So that was just a great tour. I really was like flying around on the bus like a little fairy. As I told you, my name to them is Fairy. So thank you very much. I hope I will see you. Have a great journey home, and you know, the world is very small, so we meet us again. Thank you.
Well, our Cosmos tour of Central Europe has come to a close. We visited Germany and Poland, then down to Hungary, then up to Austria, and then into the Czech Republic and back to Germany. And each of the cities that we've visited have been just wonderful, big and interesting and historical. The thing that struck me most has been how the effect of the Second World War and then of communism has affected these countries, and it's been pretty terrible what we've seen. But then afterwards the countries have sorted themselves out, and once they've become more free, have been able to grow into prosperous countries that we see today. The other thing that struck me is the effect on the Jewish population in all of these countries in the war and afterwards. It's just been terrible, and we saw that particularly in Auschwitz. But the wonderful thing, I suppose, is that today all of these countries have created a future for themselves that's pretty special. And it's been very special for me and for us to come here to Central Europe with Cosmos. It's been a fantastic tour.
You know, like very, very difficult to talk the last moment, because, you know, I gave my heart and I hope it showed. Yeah. And you take it. You're taking my heart home, and the home is, you know, like the world is very small. So you never know how we meet. We can meet all the time through, you know, like emails first, maybe Facebook, and then, you know, like traveling as well. We will see each other definitely. So I promise you. And one word is explain my feeling, because I had extremely, extremely beautiful time with you. I love you. Thank you very much.